The night was cold and the forest was silent. A man walked slowly along the narrow path, his footsteps soft on the wet ground. He pulled his jacket tighter around him. Trying to keep warm, the trees were tall and dark, their branches twisting like hands in the air. The only sound was the wind. Whistling between the trunks, it sounded almost like voices. Whispering secrets in the night, he told himself it was only the wind. He had taken this path many times before, but tonight it felt different. The air was heavy, the silence deeper than usual. It was the kind of silence that made the heart beat louder every time he stepped forward. It seemed like something was watching him, hiding in the shadows, but when he turned to look, there was nothing, only the dark forest and the moving leaves. He stopped for a moment, listening. The wind blew harder, shaking the branches somewhere in the distance. A faint sound echoed. It was not the call of an animal, not the crack of a broken branch. It was softer, weaker, almost like a cry. He frowned and told himself again, it's just the wind. But the sound came again. This time closer, it was not the wind. It was the voice of a child. His heart began to race. Who would bring a child into the forest at night? The man hesitated, then stepped off the path. The ground was damp and soft, and the trees grew thicker. The deeper he walked, the colder it became. The sound of crying grew clearer, mixed with short gasps. Like someone struggling to breathe, the man moved carefully, afraid to scare whoever was out there. He pushed aside the branches and lowered his steps. Following the sound, then he saw it. At first, he thought it was only a trick of the moonlight. A small figure sat curled up between two large rocks. Its body was shaking and faint light glowed around it. It looked like a child, but not a human child. Its skin was pale blue, shining gently in the dark. Its eyes were large and bright, filled with fear. The man froze where he stood, his breath caught in his chest. He had never seen anything like this before. The little figure trembled, pulling its arms around itself. It was so small, so fragile, as if even the night air could break it. The man's first thought was to run. To leave it behind. He did not know what it was, or why it was here. But something about the way it cried pulled at his heart. It was the sound of pain, the sound of loneliness, and no matter what it was, no child should cry alone in the dark. He stepped forward slowly, his hand raised to show he meant no harm. The figure flinched, pressing itself tighter against the rocks. Its glowing eyes widened and its breathing grew faster. The man whispered softly, "It's all right. I won't hurt you." But the figure shook its head, as if it did not believe him. The man crouched lower, trying not to look threatening. He could see now that the little one was injured. There were marks on its arms and its body shivered with weakness. Every breath it took sounded painful. He wanted to reach out, but he stayed still. The figure's lips moved and a small sound came out. It was not English, but a word filled with fear. Then, to his surprise, it whispered again in a broken voice. A single word clear enough to understand. "Hunters." The man froze, his heart sinking. Hunters? What hunters? Who was chasing this child? He looked around, suddenly aware of the silence around him. The wind had stopped. The forest seemed to be holding its breath. And then, from far away, he heard a new sound. A branch snapping under a heavy step. Someone or something was out there. Moving closer, the man's pulse quickened. He looked at the little alien child still trembling in the dark. Her glowing eyes pleaded with him, though she said nothing more for a moment. The man stood torn between fear and instinct. He could walk away, leave this strange being behind, but something deep inside told him he couldn't. He couldn't leave her to the hunters, whoever they were. The wind rose again, whispering through the trees. The forest seemed alive, watching, waiting. The man swallowed hard and took a slow breath. He knew that his life was about to change. He had thought it was just the wind, but in the dark, he had found something far more dangerous. A little alien girl shaking and alone, and someone else was coming for her. The man stayed still, his heart beating fast. The little alien girl looked so weak, so frightened, yet her eyes shone like two small stars in the dark. She kept shaking, clutching her thin arms, her body glowing faintly as if she carried light inside her skin. The man wanted to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. How could he tell her he meant no harm when she could barely trust him? Still, he whispered softly, "It's all right. I'm not your enemy." The girl turned her face away, her breathing shallow every time she inhaled. It sounded like a struggle, as if her chest could not hold enough air. The man took a careful step closer, but she flinched and pressed herself tighter into the rocks. She was terrified of him. Her whole body trembled like a leaf in the storm. The man realized she had been running for a long time. Hiding, surviving. She was not just scared of the hunters. She was scared of him too. He crouched low, his voice calm and steady. "I won't hurt you, I promise," he said. The girl's eyes flickered toward him. Doubtful, her small hands glowed faintly, as if ready to release some hidden power. The man noticed the scratches on her arms, the dirt on her face, the bruises on her legs. This child had been through something terrible. She looked fragile, but there was strength in her eyes too. A quiet strength that had kept her alive this long. The man slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a cloth. He held it out, showing it was empty of weapons. The girl blinked at it, her glowing eyes narrowing with suspicion. But the man simply placed the cloth on the ground between them and stepped back. It was a small gesture, a way to show her he was not a threat. The girl's breathing eased just a little, though she still did not move. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the faint cries of the forest night. Then, in a trembling voice, the girl spoke again. Her words were broken, but the man understood. "Hunters. They come. They take," she whispered. Her voice cracked and her small body shivered harder. She pressed her tiny hands against her chest, her eyes filled with fear. Tears slipped down her glowing skin, sparkling like drops of light. The man felt a sharp twist in his chest. She was not just a strange creature. She was a child who had lost everything, a child running from monsters. He wanted to protect her even if he did not know why. He wanted to be the one who stood between her and the hunters, but before he could say anything more, a sound echoed through the trees. Heavy steps, crunching leaves, breaking branches. The hunters were closer. The girl's eyes widened in terror, her glow flickering. She whispered again, "They find me. They take me away." Her small hands reached out, then pulled back, torn between fear and trust. The man leaned closer and whispered quickly, "You must stay quiet. I will keep you safe." But inside, he did not know how. He was only one man alone in the forest, with no weapon but his courage. The girl's breathing grew sharp, her little body shaking like it might break apart. Her eyes locked onto his, begging for help without words. The man took a deep breath and made a choice. He reached forward slowly, and this time he placed his hand gently on her shoulder. She froze, her whole body stiff for a moment. He thought she would push him away, but then, slowly, she let out a trembling breath and leaned into his hand. It was the first moment of trust, fragile but real. The man wrapped his coat around her small frame, hiding her glow from the night. Her body was cold, shivering under the fabric. She looked up at him, still scared, but no longer alone. The man whispered, "You're safe with me." She clutched the coat, holding on to it as if it were a shield. Her small fingers trembled, but she stayed close. For the first time, her shaking slowed. Even as the hunters drew nearer, the forest grew darker. The sound of the hunters moving closer with every step. The man crouched lower, pulling the girl with him. He pressed his back against the rock, shielding her small body with his own. He could hear the hunters' strange voices now, deep and sharp like metal grinding against stone. They were searching, sniffing the air, their weapons clinking in the dark. The girl buried her face against the man's chest. Her glowing eyes hidden, he held her tightly, his heart pounding like thunder. The hunters stopped nearby, their shadows stretching across the trees. The man held his breath, praying they would not hear. Every sound in the forest seemed louder. The beating of his heart, the trembling of the child, the whistle of the wind. The hunters stood still, their heads turning as if they could feel her presence. One of them stepped closer, so close the man could see the sharp edge of its weapon. The girl whimpered softly, and he tightened his arms around her. The hunter froze, tilting its head, listening. The man pressed his lips together, his whole body stiff with fear. Finally, after a long moment, the hunters moved again. Their heavy steps faded deeper into the forest. Searching elsewhere, the man let out a slow breath. But his heart still raced. The girl clung to him. Her glowing eyes wet with tears, he looked down at her and whispered, "I will protect you." For the first time, she did not turn away. She believed him, even if just a little. But the danger was not gone. The hunters would return, and they would not stop until they found her. The man knew he had no choice anymore. He had to keep moving. Keep her hidden, keep her alive. He pulled her closer, wrapped her tighter in his coat. And together they slipped deeper into the forest shadows. One human, one alien child, bound by fear, trust, and the promise of survival. The night grew darker as the man carried the small alien girl in his coat. Her faint glow was hidden under the fabric, but he could still feel her trembling. Every few steps she let out a shaky breath, and he pressed her closer to his chest. The hunters were still in the forest, their voices echoing like sharp knives through the trees. He knew they were getting closer, and soon they would find the trail. The man's mind raced. He had no weapon, no plan, only the will to survive. He looked at the girl, her wide glowing eyes staring up at him. She trusted him now, even if only a little. And he could not let her down, he whispered softly. Stay quiet. No matter what happens, she nodded weakly, her tiny fingers gripping the edge of his coat. The sound of branches breaking grew louder. The hunters were near, their steps heavy, their strange language carrying through the air. The man crouched low, moving carefully through the undergrowth. He tried to hide his footprints in the soft dirt, brushing them away with branches, but the hunters were skilled. They had been chasing her for a long time. They could smell fear, track movement, sense weakness. The man reached a fallen tree and slid under it, pulling the girl with him. The wood smelled damp and old, covered in moss. They stayed hidden as shadows passed nearby. Through the cracks in the bark, he could see tall shapes moving slowly, their weapons glowing faint red. The hunters were not human, their bodies long and lean, their heads covered in hard plates like armor. Their eyes burned yellow in the dark, searching, always searching. One of the hunters stopped just a few steps away. It bent down, sniffing the air, its sharp teeth glinting in the moonlight. The man held his breath, his chest tight, afraid even the sound of his heartbeat would give them away. The girl pressed her small face against him, her glowing tears wetting his shirt. The hunter lifted its head and gave a low growl, then moved on. The man let out a slow breath, but he knew it was only luck. Next time, they would not pass so easily. He pulled the girl out from under the tree and moved quickly. The forest stretched endlessly ahead, dark and filled with danger. He could not run too fast, not with her small body weak and fragile. Every step he took felt heavy, but he kept moving. Then suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the night. A whistle, long and piercing. The hunters had found the trail. The girl gasped, whispering in fear. They come. Her voice was tiny, but filled with terror. The man looked around, his eyes searching for any way to escape. Ahead, he saw a cluster of rocks forming a narrow passage. It was risky, but it was the only chance. He ran toward it, his breath hard, his arms tight around the child. Behind him, the hunters roared, their heavy steps shaking the ground. The passage was narrow, barely wide enough for him to squeeze through. The rocks scraped his arms. The girl clung tightly to his chest. The sound of the hunters grew closer, their voices echoing like thunder. Then a red beam of light cut through the trees, burning into the ground where he had just stood. The hunters were firing their weapons. The man ducked lower, pressing himself against the rocks. He moved as quickly as he could, heart pounding in his ears. They came out the other side of the passage and stumbled into a small clearing. The moonlight shone down, making the girl's skin glow faintly again. The man quickly pulled the coat tighter around her, hiding the light, but it was too late. The hunters had seen them. A roar echoed behind them, shaking the forest like a storm. The girl whimpered, whispering, "They not stop. They never stop." The man turned, his body shaking but his eyes burning with defiance. He had no weapon, but he had something else, his mind. He spotted a broken branch on the ground. Long and sharp at one end, it was no match for alien weapons. But it was better than nothing. He picked it up and held it tight. His other arm wrapped around the child. He whispered to her, "Stay behind me." But she shook her head, her glowing eyes filled with sadness. She raised her small hand, and for a moment, the faint glow in her skin grew brighter. The man stared in shock, realizing she had a hidden power. The glow flickered like a dying flame. She was too weak to use it. But even that small light made the hunters pause. They hissed and growled, wary of the strange power. The man took the chance, pulling the girl close and running again. Branches whipped his face. His legs burned with exhaustion, but he did not stop. Not when the girl's life depended on him. At last, he spotted an old wooden structure half hidden under vines. It looked like the remains of an outpost, broken and forgotten. He rushed inside, placing the girl against the wall. The roof creaked above. The walls cracked, but it was shelter. He crouched beside her, his sharp stick still in hand. The girl whispered, her voice trembling, Why help me?" The man looked at her, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. "Because you're just a child," he said softly. And no child should be hunted. Her eyes widened, tears glowing in the moonlight. For the first time, she reached out and touched his hand. It was small, trembling, but filled with trust. The man tightened his grip on the stick, listening as the hunters circled closer. He knew the fight was only beginning. The hunters would not stop, not tonight, not ever, and now, he was part of it. A human man standing between the hunters and a frightened alien child. The night was far from over, and the danger was only growing stronger. The night dragged on as the man and the alien child hid inside the broken outpost. The old walls groaned in the wind, and every sound made him tighten his grip on the sharp stick. The girl sat close to him, wrapped in his coat. Her glow faint but steady now. Her breathing was still weak, but her eyes were open, watching him carefully. For the first time since he found her, she looked a little calmer, though fear still lingered deep inside. The man whispered, "We can't stay here long." "They'll come back." The girl nodded slowly, her small hands trembling as she pulled the coat tighter. Her lips parted and she whispered one word again. "Hunters?" The man leaned closer. "Who are they? Why are they after you?" The girl looked down, her glowing tears falling silently. At first she said nothing, but then her voice came out soft and broken. "They destroy," she whispered, her words heavy with sorrow. "They find my people. They burn our homes, take our land, kill everyone. I run. I hide. I only one left." Her voice cracked, and she pressed her tiny hands to her face. The man's chest tightened. He had suspected she was running from something terrible, but now the truth was worse. She was the last of her kind, a child carrying the weight of an entire world. The man placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Though he knew sorry was not enough, the girl lowered her hands, her glowing eyes shining in the dark. "They not stop," she said, her voice trembling. "They follow me across stars. They want me gone. They want my people forgotten. They want no memory, no child. Nothing left." The man clenched his fists, anger rising inside him. These hunters were not just chasing a child. They were trying to erase an entire species. He looked at her and said firmly, "Then they won't take you. Not while I live." The girl's eyes widened, her tears glistening as she whispered, Why you help?" The man paused, searching for the right words. He had never thought of himself as a hero, but looking at her, he felt something awaken. "You remind me of what matters," he said softly. "No one deserves to be hunted like this, not a child." "Not you?" The girl stared at him, silent, then slowly reached out her small, glowing hand. She placed it against his chest, right over his heart. The glow spread faintly into his skin, warm and gentle. The man froze, feeling a strange energy pass into him. It was not painful, but powerful, like a piece of her soul touching his. She pulled her hand back, her eyes shining brighter now. "You different," she whispered. "You not like others. You care." The man wanted to ask what she meant, but suddenly the ground shook. The broken walls rattled, dust falling from the roof. The hunters were close again, their machines growling in the distance. The girl gasped, her glow flickering with fear. "They bring machines," she whispered. "They search everything. They crush all hiding places." The man's pulse quickened. He knew their time in the outpost was almost over. He stood quickly, grabbing her small hand. "We have to move now." The girl stumbled to her feet. Still weak, but she held onto him tightly. The two of them slipped out through a hole in the wall, moving into the shadows of the trees. Behind them, red lights cut through the forest, sweeping across the ground like giant eyes. The machines growled louder, metal legs pounding against the earth. The hunters were no longer walking blindly. They were hunting with full force. The man pulled the girl down behind a log as a red beam swept past. The glow of her skin was too dangerous now. It could give them away. He quickly took dirt and leaves, rubbing them gently over her arms and face. The girl gasped softly. Confused, but he whispered, "Hide your light. We must cover it." Her glow dimmed under the layer of dirt, though faint sparks still leaked through. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. The hunter's machine stomped closer, crushing trees, breaking rocks. The man held the girl tightly, his eyes searching for escape. In the distance, he saw a narrow stream cutting through the forest. Water glistened under the moonlight, fast and cold. He whispered to the girl, "We'll follow the stream. The water will hide our scent. Hide our tracks." The girl nodded, trusting him. Even though fear still filled her small face, they moved carefully toward the water, their steps silent, but then a loud roar split the night. A machine turned. Its red eye locking onto them, the man's heart jumped, and he scooped the girl into his arms, running as fast as he could. The ground shook as the machine chased. Crushing trees in its path, the girl clung to him, whispering, "They see us, they see us." The man gritted his teeth, pushing his legs harder. Ahead, the stream sparkled in the moonlight. Their only chance. He leapt down the bank, splashing into the cold water. The girl gasped as the icy current touched her skin, but she held on. The man waded quickly, letting the water rush over them, carrying away their trail behind them. The machine stopped at the edge, scanning, its red light sweeping. For a tense moment, it seemed like it would step in after them. But then it turned away, moving back into the forest. Fooled by the rushing current, the man collapsed against the far bank. Gasping for air, the girl still in his arms. Her eyes looked up at him. Filled with both fear and wonder, she whispered, "You saved me again." He smiled faintly, though his chest was heavy with worry. "It's not over," he said quietly. "But as long as I breathe, they will not take you." The girl's glow flickered gently under the dirt, her tears shining like tiny stars. For the first time, she allowed herself to lean against him fully. Her trust was no longer broken, but fragile and real. The man looked out into the dark forest. The hunters were stronger than anything he had faced. But he had made a choice. He would stand against them, even if it cost him his life, because now, protecting her was more than survival. It was the only thing that mattered. The stream carried them deeper into the forest, its cold water hiding their trail. The man pulled himself onto the bank, lifting the alien girl carefully. Her small body shook from the freezing water, but her glow was almost gone now. Hidden under dirt and exhaustion, he whispered, "You're safe for now." Though inside he knew it was only a matter of time before the hunters found them again. The night was alive with distant roars and the pounding steps of machines. The hunters were spreading wider, combing every corner of the forest. Red beams of light swept through the trees, searching for even the smallest movement. The man's heart raced as he crouched low, keeping the girl close. They had to keep moving, they had to stay ahead. The girl looked up at him, her glowing eyes dim with fear. "They not stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They never stop until I am gone." The man clenched his jaw, gripping her small hand tightly. "Then we won't stop either," he said firmly. "We'll keep moving. We'll fight if we must." The girl stared at him in silence, then nodded slowly, her trust growing stronger with each step. The forest twisted ahead of them, thick roots and sharp rocks slowing their path. The man guided the girl carefully, every sense alert. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the ground behind them. A machine burst through the trees, its massive legs crushing the earth, its red eye glowing like fire. The girl gasped, clutching his coat. "They find us." The man's pulse thundered as he pulled her forward. "Run," he whispered harshly. Though his own legs were already burning with exhaustion, branches whipped against his face, roots caught his boots, but he did not stop. The machine roared, its beam slicing through the dark, burning the ground where they had just been. The girl stumbled, her small body weak, and the man scooped her up again, running harder. The weight of her body pressed against his arms, but he refused to let go. He dodged between trees, zigzagging to confuse the beam. Every second felt like borrowed time ahead. He saw a thick wall of vines covering a rocky slope. Without thinking, he pushed through, dragging the girl behind him. They slid down the slope, rocks cutting into his hands, dirt filling his lungs. The machine roared above, but for a moment, its heavy body could not follow. They landed hard at the bottom, the girl crying out in pain. The man held her close, whispering, "Quiet, stay quiet." Above them, the machine's red beam swept back and forth, searching for movement. The man scanned the ground quickly, his eyes sharp. Nearby, he saw fallen branches, heavy stones, and an old pit half covered with leaves. An idea sparked in his mind. He set the girl gently against the rock, crouching beside her. "I need you to stay here," he whispered. "Trust me." The girl's glowing eyes filled with fear, but she nodded. The man grabbed branches and rocks, setting a trap near the pit. It was simple, but maybe enough. The machine pushed through the vines, its legs cracking trees as it came closer. The man picked up a stone and threw it into the opposite direction. The machine turned, its red beam flashing. Stomping toward the sound, he quickly ran back to the girl, lifting her into his arms, but the trap was waiting. As the machine stepped near the pit, its heavy weight broke the ground. The earth caved in, and the beastly machine dropped halfway into the hole. It roared, thrashing, its metal legs kicking wildly. The man didn't wait, he ran. The girl pressed against his chest behind them. The machine shrieked and tried to climb out, but it was stuck for the moment, giving them precious time. The girl's eyes widened, watching him with awe. "You trick them," she whispered softly. The man managed a faint smile. "Sometimes you don't need strength. Only cleverness," but their relief was short. Another roar echoed ahead, and this time more hunters appeared, their tall bodies blocking the path. Their glowing weapons hummed, ready to strike. The man froze, clutching the girl tightly, his stick useless against such power. The girl's body trembled. Her eyes glowing brighter than before, she whispered, I can help." Before the man could stop her, she raised her small hands. A sudden burst of light exploded from her palms, bright and wild. The hunters hissed, their weapons sparking as the light struck them. One of the machines staggered, its red eye flickering. The forest filled with the sound of energy crackling and branches burning. The girl collapsed against the man, her body weak from the effort, but she had done enough. The hunters stumbled, blinded for a moment. Their weapons failing, the man didn't waste time. He picked her up and bolted through the gap between the staggering hunters. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but he kept going behind him. The hunters roared, recovering quickly. But the girl's small power had bought them just enough time. The night was filled with chaos, roars, beams, the sound of trees collapsing, but somehow they slipped deeper into the forest again. At last, the man dropped to his knees beside a large fallen log. He placed the girl down, her small chest rising and falling quickly. She was pale, her glow dim, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "You saved us," he whispered, brushing dirt from her face. The girl shook her head weakly. "No, we still hunted. More will come." The man looked out at the forest. Hearing distant roars drawing closer again, she was right. The chase was not over. But in that moment, he realized something powerful. The girl was not just running for her life. She carried a power the hunters feared, a power they wanted erased, and now he was the only one standing between her and their endless wrath. The man's grip tightened on the stick, his eyes fierce. "We'll keep fighting," he whispered. "Together. We'll survive this." The girl's glowing eyes softened, her hand weakly reaching for his. She held on, and though her body shook, she whispered back. Together, the forest was alive with danger. The hunters closing in once more, but now, the man and the child had more than fear. They had trust, courage, and a bond that even the hunters could not break easily. The chase would continue, but so would their will to fight. The night had grown long, but the danger had only grown stronger. The man carried the alien child through the forest, his legs aching, his chest burning with every breath. She was weak, her glow almost gone, but her eyes still shone faintly in the dark. Behind them, the roars of hunters echoed. Joined by the pounding legs of their machines, they were closing in, and soon there would be no place left to hide. Then, through the trees, the man saw it, an old outpost, broken but still standing, its walls made of rusted metal, its roof half collapsed. It looked abandoned, forgotten by time, but to him it looked like hope. He carried the girl inside, setting her gently against a wall. The building groaned in the wind, but it was shelter and maybe, just maybe, a place to make a stand. The girl's glowing eyes looked up at him, filled with fear. "They come," she whispered weakly. "You cannot stop them." The man crouched low, gripping her small hand. "I will try," he said firmly. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me." Her tears sparkled faintly in the moonlight, glowing like tiny stars. For a moment, her trembling stopped, as if his words had given her strength. The man searched the outpost quickly. Inside, he found broken tools, scraps of metal, pieces of old machines. It wasn't much, but it was something. He grabbed wires, sharp edges of steel, heavy pipes, and set them up near the doorway. He tied what he could, setting traps, making noisemakers, anything to slow the hunters. His hands were shaking, his body tired, but his mind burned with determination. He would not let them take her, not while he still breathed. Outside, the forest roared with the sound of machines. The ground shook, branches snapped, and red lights glowed through the trees. The hunters were close, their shadows stretching across the walls of the outpost. The man stood tall, the sharp stick in one hand, a heavy pipe in the other. The girl whispered from the corner, her voice trembling. "They will kill you." The man turned, his eyes hard but calm. Then I'll die protecting you." The first hunter crashed through the wall, its tall body glowing with yellow eyes. The man swung the pipe with all his strength, striking the hunter across its chest. It roared, stumbling back, and a trap of wires snapped shut, pulling it into a pile of broken metal. The man grabbed the stick and thrust it forward. Striking another hunter in the leg, it shrieked, its weapon firing wildly, burning holes in the wall. The outpost filled with smoke, sparks, and the sound of battle. The girl covered her ears, her eyes glowing faintly with fear and sorrow. She wanted to help, but her body was too weak, her power too drained. All she could do was watch as the human fought against monsters that no one else would dare face. The man roared as he swung the pipe again, striking another hunter across its head. It fell hard, its weapon clattering to the ground. But more came, tall shadows pushing through the smoke. Weapons raised, eyes burning like fire. The man's chest burned, his arms heavy, his body shaking with exhaustion, but he refused to stop. Every strike, every swing was for her. He blocked a glowing blade with the pipe, sparks flying. He smashed another trap, dropping heavy steel onto a hunter's back, crushing it to the ground. But one of the hunters struck him across the shoulder, sending him crashing against the wall. Pain exploded through his body, his vision blurred. The girl screamed, her small voice piercing the chaos. The man forced himself to stand, blood running down his arm. He grabbed the pipe again, his body trembling, his breath sharp and painful. He whispered through clenched teeth, "Not her." The hunters closed in, weapons glowing, ready to finish the fight. The girl's tears glowed brighter, her small hands shaking. She whispered, "Stop, please stop." But the hunters did not listen. Her glow grew brighter, her whole body trembling as if something inside was breaking free. The man turned toward her, his eyes wide. "No, save your strength," he said. But it was too late. The girl raised her hands, her tears glowing like fire. A burst of light exploded from her, flooding the outpost with blinding energy. The hunters screamed, their weapons sparking, their bodies thrown back by the force. The walls shook, the roof cracked. The ground split beneath them. The man shielded his eyes, holding on to the wall as the storm of light filled the night. When the light faded, the hunters were gone, thrown back into the forest, their machines silent. The outpost stood in ruins, smoke rising from the broken walls. The man staggered forward, his body weak, his shoulder bleeding. The girl collapsed to the ground, her glow fading, her breath shallow and weak. He dropped beside her, lifting her into his arms. Her eyes opened faintly, her voice a whisper. I hurt you, I didn't mean to." The man shook his head, his hand brushing the tears from her cheeks. "You saved me," he said softly. "You saved both of us." The girl's eyes closed slowly, but a faint smile touched her lips. The man held her close, his body shaking with exhaustion and pain. He looked out into the ruined forest, knowing this was not the end. The hunters would return, stronger, angrier. But for now they had survived. And as long as he still had breath, he would fight again. Because this child was more than a stranger, she was hope. And he would not let that hope be destroyed. The ruined outpost lay silent, smoke curling into the night sky. The man sat against a broken wall, the alien child resting weakly in his arms. His body ached, his shoulder burned from the wound. But he did not care. All that mattered was that she was still alive, still breathing, her faint glow pulsing softly like the last light of a dying star. The forest around them was quiet now, but the silence felt heavy. He knew the hunters would return, their kind never gave up. But for the moment there was peace, a fragile moment carved from chaos. The man looked down at the child, brushing dirt from her pale blue skin. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing softly, filled with sorrow and fear. "You should leave me," she whispered weakly. "If they find us again, they kill you too." The man shook his head, his voice steady. "I won't leave you, not now. Not ever." Her eyes widened, tears glistening faintly. "Why, I am not your kind. I am not human." The man's jaw tightened, his gaze firm. "You're a child, and that's enough. Your life matters. You matter." The girl's lips trembled, her tears glowing as they slid down her cheeks. For so long she had run. For so long she had been alone. And now, for the first time, someone had chosen her. Not as prey, not as a burden, but as family. Her small hand reached out, resting on his chest, her faint glow seeping into his skin once more. "You, different," she whispered. "You give hope." The man held her close, his voice low. "Then let's keep that hope alive. But even as he spoke, he heard distant roars again. The hunters were regrouping. Their machines awakening, the battle was not over. And it might never truly end. Yet in his heart, a fire burned brighter than fear. He had faced death tonight, and he would face it again if it meant keeping her safe. The girl closed her eyes, her small body trembling. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried weight. My people, gone, I'm last if I die. All gone forever. The man's chest tightened, his grip on her stronger. Then you will not die, he said firmly. Not while I still breathe. The dawn was rising slowly, the first light painting the forest in soft gold. The man stood, lifting the child gently into his arms. His body was weak, but his resolve was iron. He stepped out of the ruined outpost. Into the broken forest, the hunters would come again. But he was ready for the first time. He was not running from the night. He was walking toward the future. The girl looked at him with tired eyes, her voice soft. Where do we go? He glanced toward the horizon. His jaw set. Anywhere they cannot find you. And if they do, then we fight together. Her lips curled into a faint smile, fragile but real. Together, the word echoed in her heart like a promise, something she had never believed in before, but now she did behind them. The forest shook with the sound of machines. The hunters were not far, their wrath burning hotter than ever. But the man did not turn back, he only walked forward, carrying her. Every step was heavy, but every step was chosen. He was no longer just a man lost in the woods. He was something more, a protector, a defier of fate. The girl whispered again, her voice faint but filled with wonder. Why risk everything for me? The man looked down at her, his eyes steady, his voice calm. Because humanity is not about who we are born as. It's about who we choose to stand for, and I choose you. Her tears glowed brighter, her small hand gripping his coat tightly. She buried her face against him, no longer trembling. For the first time since her world fell, she felt safe, not because the danger was gone, but because she was no longer alone. The hunters could come, the galaxy could turn against them, but this bond was stronger than fear, stronger than death. The man's steps carried them out of the forest and onto the open fields beyond. The rising sun cast light over the land, chasing away the shadows. For a moment, it looked like the world itself was giving them a blessing. The man whispered softly, almost to himself. This is only the beginning. The girl lifted her head, her eyes glowing softly. What do you mean? The man's gaze hardened as he looked at the horizon. The hunters will not stop, but now, they have more to fear than you. They have humanity, and they will learn what that means. The wind rose, carrying the scent of smoke and metal from the forest behind them. The girl leaned against his chest, whispering, Then I am not alone anymore. The man smiled faintly, his voice steady. Never again, together. They walked into the dawn, one human and one alien child, bound by survival, by loss, by a choice that would echo across the stars. The galaxy might call her a fugitive. The hunters might call her prey. But the man had given her a new name, a new truth. She was family, and no law, no enemy. No darkness could take that away, and so, their story did not end in the ruins of the outpost. It began there in the fire of battle, in the tears of fear, in the promise of protection. The hunters would return, and greater wars would come. But humanity had made its choice, and the choice was her.